Pat, let's move on to the running backs. And a historic season turned in by J.K. Dobbins in 2019. He, of course, exploded onto the scene in Game 1 against Indiana in 2017. By his standards that he had set as a freshman, had a bit of a slump as a sophomore, vowed to make amends. And before we move on to the 2020 running backs, just your perspective on what J.K. Dobbins turned in 2019, because it was truly historic and arguably the greatest season in the history of Ohio State running backs.
Yeah, record-setting for J.K. Dobbins. Climbed up the Ohio State all-time rushing list. I believe he finished second or third probably. I'd have to check that, but broke the single-season rushing record, was the first Ohio State running back. And if you've paid attention to Ohio State football, you know that goes back a while, but he got over 2,000 yards in that final game against Clemson. J.K. Dobbins was a guy who was never satisfied. Even talking to him before the Fiesta Bowl, he talked about the fact that, he felt like he still had something to prove, that he had doubters out there, that people didn't know how good he was, things like that. And this is a guy who, was talked about as one of the best running backs in the country. Some people thought he deserved a Heisman Trophy invite. Is going to be one of the top running backs, I imagine, taken in the NFL draft in April. So for a guy who, accomplished a lot, he wanted to do more. And, I think that's kind of the chip on the shoulder that J.K. Dobbins has. He came in as a sort of under-recruited running back out of Texas. He broke his ankle the first play of his senior year, so didn't have senior season highlight tape, but Ohio State liked what they saw otherwise. And like you mentioned, had a breakout freshman season, thanks in part to injuries to running back Mike Weber, who was the incumbent starter, but, really took that job and ran with it. And then you saw last year, once Weber was gone and JK had the job pretty much full time, what he could do. And it was like you said, a very special season for him.
JK's career stats actually place him second all time in rushing to R.G. Griffin, a full 500 yards ahead of Ezekiel Elliott.
That's right.
Is the single season record, of course, with the big game against Clemson in the college football playoff, and sixth all time in rushing touchdowns behind Pete Johnson, Keith Byers, Eddie George, Zeke, and throw in JT Barrett as well at the quarterback position. Got Pat Murphy on the line from Bucknuts breaking down the Buckeyes at running back for 2020. So J.K. Dobbins we'll see on Sundays. On Saturdays, it starts with a big competition that is headlined by Master Teague right now, but very tentatively.
Correct. Master Teague was the backup to J.K. Dobbins last year and was more than adequate as the number 2 for Ohio State. Rushed for 789 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns. Was known as a bruiser, but showed a good amount of speed throughout his time this season. Got a lot of reps in part because Ohio State was up big in a lot of games, but took advantage of those and started to see some reps early in games. He would occasionally get his own drive. But we saw a little bit at the end of the year when he started to play more difficult competition, especially in the game against Clemson, when J.K. Dobbins goes out with an injury, the production wasn't there. And, this is a kid who is a redshirt freshman. He did play in 4 games his freshman year, so it wasn't completely inexperienced. But, against Penn State, 2 carries, 7 yards. Against Michigan, 12 carries, 29 yards. Against Clemson, 7 carries, 9 yards. So not what you want to see from a guy necessarily that is expected to be your starter this year. I envision that Ohio State, unless somebody breaks out during the spring and summer, fall camp as the number 1 running back, that Ohio State uses much more of a committee approach in 2020. Behind Master Teague on the depth chart, Demario McCall is a guy we've talked about a number of times, a guy that's been talked about a lot among Ohio State fans. Came in as a freshman, had some electrifying performances. He's a smaller scat back type and has just shown flashes throughout his career of what he can do. Definitely explosive, had some opportunities in the return game the last couple of years, but has just never been consistently given an opportunity. Moved to H-back for a while for Ohio State, then moved back to running back. So he's a guy I imagine will be in the mix. Redshirt freshman, Marcus Crowley and Steele Chambers should also be a part of any sort of rotation we talk about. Those are guys that both saw a little bit of time as during their freshman season last year. Crowley got hurt, and it may still be recovering this spring, so we'll see his availability, but looked good from what we saw. Steele Chambers, the same thing, limited opportunity, but looked like a productive player. These are guys that I'm not sure if they're ready to carry a full workload yet, but could be, a part of a rotation or, a group that each guy kind of presents a different set of skills. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And we'll see in the spring kind of what that pecking order at running back looks like. I imagine just given the way the season ended, Master Teague will be the number one. But, he's got to hold off those guys if he wants to be the workhorse. And he definitely does. I talked to him before the Fiesta Bowl, and, he believes that with J.K. Dobbins gone, and at the time he said when J.K. Dobbins leaves, he's the next man up. So the motivation is certainly there. The opportunity will be there. He's just got to seize that opportunity and run with it in a better fashion than we saw those last 3 games, or 4 games really, he didn't play against Wisconsin of the 2019 season.
Shop Amazon using the link in the description section below to help us build the channel. Like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Pat Murphy from Bucknuts breaking down the Buckeyes at running back. Thanks so much, Pat.
Thank you.